a couple of minutes just talking, you and I, as we often do. Well, we used to do it all the time when I used to give my voice, my opinion on Channel 8. And, lately what I've been trying to get you to do is go over to the YouTube channel so we could develop that format because Facebook, sometimes they trip. They do. They do. And I'm going to give you an example of how this could happen. And this show could very well be only played one time indeed. So this is February 26th. What's the date? February 26, 2022. But if it was 2012 at this time, 507, Trayvon Martin would have still been alive. So it's one of those situations now that we have to realize now that time does pass, and with time passes, people pass. And in this particular situation, it should not have occurred. That's the reason why today, during the last 40 minutes of this show, that we're going to be talking about Trayvon Martin and what Trayvon Martin meant and what he continues to mean in the community which we call these United States. We will take your phone call if you have anything you'd like to add. Other than that, you're going to hear me talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. But every once in a while, I will go ahead and I take a sip of this Arizona iced tea. Me being a diabetic, that is diet. But nevertheless, it's Arizona iced tea. And Skittles. Tragic, indeed, that a person's last meal could be tea and Skittles. Tea and Skittles. Arizona iced tea and Skittles. 214-556-6239. Trayvon Martin, and I recall the day that Trayvon died. It didn't make no news because things like that, generally speaking, don't make news. I'm gonna give you some tips on some things that actually happen. You got a minute so we can talk this out? And if you want to go ahead and chime in, Angelo, you can at any given time. I want to take my time with this because Trayvon Martin, I wrote in one of my papers, Trayvon Martin saved my social activist soul. Trayvon Martin saved my social activist soul. See, because at that time in 2012, that's before My Voice, My Opinion came out, before I started doing the radio show, the commercial radio show. I was just at SMU, chilling, doing my thing, mentoring African-American male students so they could remain in school in a primary white institution because they were catching hell doing that. And catching hell is just like a support system. There's sometimes it's not support systems to keep you in school. And I, being an alumni, made sure that I wanted to keep that going on. Well, what happened was that after Trayvon was killed, there was a prayer vigil that occurred at SMU. And Emmanuel Obi, who was the head of the black attorneys, he's the SMU graduate as well, he led a prayer vigil. And during the prayer vigil, I posted on this thing called Facebook. They didn't have Facebook Live then, because if they did, I would have posted it live. But I posted that I was at the prayer vigil. What did I do that for? I did that, and it seemed like everybody in Grand Prairie, Texas, where I was the city planning commissioner, started sending me text messages, saying that I was at a radical meeting on campus at SMU regarding Black Lives Matter. Now, we didn't have no Black Lives Matter hashtag at that time. We just had the Trayvon Martin hashtag. And these were people that I respected at that time. Some of them were prominent people in Grand Prairie who then said that what I was doing was rabble rousing because I was at, of all things, a prayer vigil. A prayer vigil. See, black people lead the world in praying, it seems like. We pray for everything. We pray nothing happens to us. We pray for good things to happen. We pray for our enemies. We pray that our enemies don't hit us again. We pray that our enemies will someday understand us. We pray that our enemies don't hit us again. You should get tired of praying sometimes. You should start doing something. I mean, prayer does change things, but you also have to do something regarding that. And that's when I decided to do what I was doing. And what I was doing was I needed to take this thing a little bit more. So the people in Grand Prairie at this Rotary Club, which was one of the clubs that pretty well was very influential. Several members that were in the leadership of the Rotary Club condemned me for going there. Well, what did they do that for? But they did that, it just made it for me. It's before they had the word double down. I doubled down. Angelo, what do you think about this Trayvon Martin revisit? Where were you at then? While you mic yourself up, I'm going to go ahead and give you some classic facts that people have overlooked. Number one. I mean, everyone pretty well knows the whole deal. Young man goes to the store, goes back home to a gated community. It's a suburb of Orlando, Florida. His father's girlfriend lived in the complex, and he was living with his father. So he had a right to be there. He came through the gated community, and the watchman that was over it decided that he didn't have the right to be there. Now, somehow we have that occur in Dallas, Texas, because in McKinney, Texas, they had a pool party around about that same time, and some kids got jacked up at a pool party because they looked like they didn't belong. It seems that in America, if you don't belong, you end up getting in a situation that could be detrimental to your life. And in this particular case, that was a situation with Trayvon. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just so to answer your question, at around that time, February 26, 2012, I was a senior in high school. So for me, this case, along with me and my friends, I mean, this was something that really hit us hard because these are the things that we did. We were walking around, meeting up at a park, going to the corner store, picking up snacks, messing around, just walking around, hanging out, joking around in the neighborhood. Nothing, nothing mischievous, no criminal activity, but just being a 17, 16-year-old.
How old were you then?
At that time, 2012, I was 17 years old.
Wow,
I was actually just having my daughter as well. So
you were 17. Trayvon was 17 as well. Y'all were both the same age.
Yep.
So
that's what I mean. I mean, it hit us, me and our friends a lot because I always grew up with with a very mixed crowd as far as we hung out with everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody, African American, Mexican, Puerto Rican, white, everything.
Well, the thing about that as well is that in this particular case with George Zimmerman.
Yeah.
George Zimmerman originally was not white.
Right.
That folks, you didn't know that. See, this is the way it's been portrayed. And I understand how people gonna say, yeah, Ed, he was white. He didn't view himself as white. He viewed himself as Hispanic. On his driver's license, he said he was Hispanic.
Sure.
His name was George Zimmerman. His father was white. But when things got kind of testy for him, he became white then.
Absolutely.
But Trayvon Martin didn't have any options to be anything but what he was, and it was racial profiling that got him followed.
Absolutely.
I'm all choked up behind this, obviously. Pardon me. Zimmerman had saw him, and I did a little research before I got on there. Make sure that I wanted you guys to get this because we all have the cursory look about what happened. Zimmerman had saw him when he first came into the apartment complex, and followed him. Everyone knows that, but he saw him. He saw him when he came in. And he made a judgment decision with the word we call racial profiling and say he didn't look like he belonged here. And the issue with that is that a lot of times, if it don't look like you belong there, negative concept. Well.
Who determines that, though? Who determines that you don't belong somewhere? And how do you get that inclination from just a glance?
Well, I guess it determines when you get on the elevator, like coming in this building here. I've never got it messed around about getting on the elevator or anything like that because there's nobody here.
Right.
But, if I was 17 years old and it was this time of the day and somebody was here, then someone would determine that.
Yeah.
But what else was the determining factor in this as well is that we had a black man in a White House. That's what I wrote around that time as well. Mm-hmm. And when you end up having that, we lived under this concept that it was like a Will Smith movie, man. Like if they were gonna do like the President Obama story, I'm sure that Hollywood would want to put Will Smith in as the Obama person because he looks so nice. He looks so unthreatening. That's what Obama looks like. He don't look like me. He don't look like the football players you see on the NFL, like this big brothers. Slim dude. But a black man living in the White House, the whole concept was that once we do this, we don't have any problems with racism. We don't have any of that anymore. But then we ended up having Skip Gates get arrested in his own house for breaking into his own house. And then some weird stuff started happening. And then you end up having Trayvon Martin die because he happened to have been in the wrong neighborhood, which is a neighborhood he lived in, walking home with Skittles and iced tea. Let's see what the black man in the White House have something to say about that. You got the clip on that, man? Let's play that. And then when that occurred...
Is that so I got the two clips.
You got the clip.
Is it the video or is it...
The video. And I set the stage for this, and I got Angelo here. That's my dude, man. So he'll break that off to us. But let me set the stage for you. President Obama says, I have to be careful about what I say, but this is so important to me that I have to say it. And he said at that particular situation that how this affects black people, because you're always in a situation where you don't belong. So he's also internalizing this because they tripping with him at the same time. And also the whole fact that if Obama, who, as we know, President Obama had daughters, if he had a son, what would be the ramifications if he had a son? You got the clip?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go with the clip.
Obviously, this is a tragedy. I can only imagine what these parents are going through. And when I think about this boy, I think about my own kids. And I think every parent in America should be able to understand why it is absolutely imperative that we investigate every aspect of this, and that everybody pulls together, federal, state, and local, to figure out exactly how this tragedy happened. So I'm glad that not only is the Justice Department looking into it, I understand now that the governor of the state of Florida has formed a task force to investigate what's taking place. I think all of us have to do some soul searching to figure out how does something like this happen. And that means that we examine the laws and the context for what happened, as well as the specifics of the incident. But my main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And, you know, I think they are right to expect that all of us as Americans are going to take this with the seriousness it deserves, and that we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened.
All right. Now, we got to the bottom of what happened. And the bottom of what happened was the fact that Trayvon, we find out that Trayvon was considered a John Doe. Okay? This city in Florida, Sanford, Florida, had issues with African Americans before. Well, how was that any different from any other place in America? If you're black, you can figure out that. Previously in Sanford, Florida, what had occurred was that there was a homeless African American who was beat up, and if I'm not mistaken, was killed by the son of one of the policemen that was on the Sanford Police Department. He was beat up. I have to go back on my notes to see whether or not he actually died. But this situation had occurred before. So, in this situation with Trayvon didn't have an ID. Did you know that, Angelo?
I did not.
He didn't have an ID. He was shot, killed. They originally handcuffed George Zimmerman, who we now determine was originally portrayed as Hispanic, and then when he got in trouble, he became white. That's reality. His mother's from Peru, Peruvian. His father was a magistrate, a judge, so he had some form of some form of privilege. But just because his father was a judge, Robert Zimmerman, didn't mean he was a good judge. Well, we've interviewed lots of folks here on this show, but George Zimmerman came up in a house in which his father said these organizations were racist organizations. He has a list of them. We'll begin. We won't do it in alphabetical order, but United Negro College Fund is a racist organization. I guess teaching people how to get higher education in the United Negro College Fund is not good. The Black Police Associations, I guess T-Hop, that has a radio show here. I guess he would be part of that racist organization. The NBA Players Association. Man, come on, this dude's really going after us, ain't he? The NBA Players Association. George Zimmerman's family said that's a racist organization. The NAACP is a racist organization. That's how George Zimmerman was brought up. That's the type of privilege that he had. So now, the privilege that he had and Trayvon's lack of privilege and the fact he didn't have an ID they sent his body to the morgue. Tracy Martin, his father, comes home. No doubt he hears about there was a shooting in the complex. He don't even know it's his son that's dead. He's somewhat anxious about, man, they shooting over here? But his main concern was, where's Trayvon? Trayvon's not here. He doesn't think to check the morgue or anything like that out, because why would my son be in the morgue? Didn't have an ID, but like I said before, I'm not a lawyer, but I can connect things together because I'm hanging around lawyers a lot. They view Trayvon the same way they view that homeless guy, and they just put him in the morgue. 2 days later, they identified him. He's shot. Racial profiling. Racial profiling is it. Now, I'm just talking to you, just straight up. City planning commissioner that I was, involved in Grand Prairie politics, and you know, some folks, you know, that shows up at Rotary Club meetings and everything. And it was like, well, you know, Ed, how do you feel about it? And you know, the thing about being a black person who's crossed over, if you will, is that somehow you got to represent every black person in America. And I don't. I just represent myself. But I do speak about what I see as injustice. So I mentioned the fact about racial profiling. Benjamin Crump, good friend of mine, did the representation for Trayvon's family. They said that he was racially profiled because Zimmerman stalked him, because he said that he looks to be no good. He looks like he's up to no good. And his exact words were, "These assholes get away all the time." He was directed not to follow, and he followed. And Trayvon failed, because they did get into an altercation, and I saw the pictures of Zimmerman. Zimmerman got his ass kicked, and with damn good reason, because Trayvon was fighting for his life. You seen the pictures of Zimmerman, man? I know we probably have some other footage that we can run, but the footage that I want you to realize is the footage that the pictures they showed at the trial, in which Trayvon Martin was laid out on the lawn with the iced tea and the Skittles in his hand. It's 5:30. When we come back, we will have a conclusion. But let's play a couple of those political drops, and we'll see what else you have back in your vault. All right?
Who was that masked man? You mean you don't know? That was no masked man. That was the commish. Saturdays from 5 to 6 p.m. on the Fishbowl Radio Network.
This is your community constable, Bill Gibson, representing Garland, Mesquite, Rowlett, Saxe, Centerville, and East Dallas in Precinct 2, Dallas County. And you are tuned into The Commish with Ed Gray.
Good morning. Punks. These assholes, they always get away. Those were the words in that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy who he didn't know. And excuse my language, but those were his words, not mine.
Can't just kill him up for no reason and get away with it, shout. Gotta have some justice. Whether it's street justice or legal justice. Southern Smooth. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon
right. All right, before Facebook start tripping with us, I think that's, hey man, who's that playing, man?
Little Scrappy with Trayvon
I
Martin.
didn't know I knew who Little Scrappy was, right? So fade us out. All right, we did the tribute, and we're gonna keep rolling with that. During that time frame in Dallas, and you on Facebook Live, you saw the promotion I had on that. I went downtown with several of my friends, and we marched. Always marching. Always marching. I wasn't protesting because I want to affirm what we have. But let's listen to some of the protests that was done.
No justice, no peace, no racist police. No justice, no peace, no racist police. No justice, no peace. No peace, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Green building.
Get him out the street.
All right. You remember those days? Yeah. We were marching in the streets, demanding justice again. And you know, that's, I don't protest something I'm already supposed to have. I affirm the rights that I have. And part of the rights that I have is the fact that we have the right as human beings. That's what a human rights activist is. We have the right as human beings to live and to walk wherever we want to walk at. That's what Little Scrappy said. And that's what we had. Now, the Trayvon Martin family, 10 years later, they are having to remember this date. And I know how it is when you lose a loved one. You remember 2 days, the birth date and the death date for some reason. And this date, February 26th, is standing out. This evening, CBS News is going to have a program on Trayvon. And what I was saying before, how Trayvon changed me, was that he became a modern day Emmett Till. Right after that, we ended up having the Black Lives Matter. And see, even with the Black Lives Matter movement, if you recall, they said no justice, no peace, racist police. Keep in mind, George Zimmerman wasn't a policeman. And even at these meetings that I went to with some of my former colleagues, because I don't go to those meetings anymore, I feel no need to go to those meetings. I'm no longer there doing those meetings. That what ends up happening as well is that there's a stain that falls on all of us. That stain is for the people who endure the pain, and that's the stain of oppression, and the perpetrators of that pain. George Zimmerman was empowered through white privilege that he asserted that he had once he was in trouble, and he called his father, who was a white racist magistrate, who said the United Negro College Fund was a racist organization. And, you know, the NBA players were as well. So then he assumed that, and when he assumed that, he assumed the privilege. But a lot of African Americans don't assume that privilege. They assumed another type of center of being. I think we got a clip now about the Trayvon Martin family. You got that clip? Let's play that.
Welcome back to CBS Saturday Morning. We begin this half hour with a case that gripped and divided America. Today marks 10 years since the death of Trayvon Martin. The unarmed black teenager was shot and killed by Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman during an altercation. The ensuing trial, in which Zimmerman was acquitted of Martin's murder, raised questions about race and law enforcement and was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. To observe the anniversary tonight, CBS presents Trayvon Martin 10 years later. Mark Strassman has a preview.
Local 6 News starts now. With a Sunday night local news story.
Officers were called to the Twin Lake townhomes in Sanford last night.
Trayvon Martin's legacy almost died the night he did.
The man had been shot and killed. The shooting suspect surrendered to police.
Near Orlando, a Neighborhood Watch volunteer called 911 to report a suspicious person.
This guy looks like he's up to no good.
That guy was 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, heading back from a convenience store, doing nothing wrong.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
But George Zimmerman, that Neighborhood Watch volunteer, confronted Martin anyway. He showed police later how they fought on the ground.
And he just kept slamming us.
And losing the fight, he fatally shot the teenager.
I felt his arm going down to my side, and I grabbed it, and I just grabbed my firearm, and I shot him.
Days went by.
He grabbed his firearm and he shot him. But that's not all he did. He also sued the Trayvon Martin family for millions of dollars after he shot him. I'm glancing over here because, Angelo's in the audience here. Did you know that? Yeah, you know that. See, that's when you come, when you do my show, you get educated.
I didn't know that, but just to, I'm sure all your listeners know, and I'm sure you know for sure, I do know that he tried to auction the weapon that was used in the crime, in the murder, for money, for millions.
Right.
So,
right. So
I
now,
know that. That's enough to do. I mean,
right there.
That's enough right there for me to know. But just now knowing that he even did that, sued the family of Trayvon Martin.
He sued the Trayvon Martin family for millions. Tried to auction off the gun that he killed Trayvon Martin with. And then also went to organizations and signed Skittle bags, candy with his name on it. And somehow America wants me to play songs like Don't Worry, Be Happy. This is a little song I wrote. Don't worry, be happy. But when that occurred, people woke up, including myself, and woke up. And I wasn't really asleep, because I'm always like this. But it just got my attention to make sure that I realize that nothing's really going to change, And, when people say, they say, well, Ed, once all of the old racists die, and I go like, old racists die. They say, well, what do you call old? And he said, oh, they got to be about 60 years old. I go like, wow, that's my age.
The scary thing is that these old racists are teaching these younger kids how to be racist.
And also the thing about it, Angelo, is that you have young racists.
Yeah, oh yeah.
George Zimmerman was 28 when that happened.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he wasn't an old dude.
I'm 28 years old, and so just to give retrospect, from 17.
And you consider yourself young.
That's exact. That's about from that part to 2020 or 2012. I was 17 to now I'm 28. To man.
So yeah.
I still consider myself young.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So, you know, George Zimmerman, so we're sitting here now, and now you see where I'm going at. America elects a black president. They say we don't have any racism now. We got a president in office. Is non-threatening. You know, everything's okay. So don't even worry about racism, anything like that happens. Then this thing happens, and it's like, wait a minute, hold on. And then they say, well, you know, racism is just for old people, but then you don't say anything that George Zimmerman was in his 20s when he killed this young man.
Yeah.
And then when you end up having the shooting at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, it was a young white male that did that.
Yep.
So there's no hope. You know, I was on a program this past week, and they said, well, what gives you faith and hope? And it's like, keep the faith. And keep the faith, you know, faith died and hope left town. So that's what I have, you know. Jesse Jackson, you say, keep hope alive. Hope died. Faith left town. So that's where we at. It's like, what are we going to do? We can have shows in which people can give you these platitudes by saying that if we all get along and we all talk together after the George Floyd thing and we're having a kumbaya moment, we now realize the error of our ways, and then you don't do anything about the error of your ways, then you haven't did anything at all. And that's where we at, you know. That's where we at. Angelo?
Oh man. It's just really tough to think about that, how bad it's gotten. And you're right, it feels like there hasn't been much change, you know, from all the stories I've heard about segregation and the times, and not even just the history book stories, but the real stories from people who really lived through that. You know, the interviews I've heard from being up here at Fishbowl, or the conversations I've had with people out on the street, you know. And the only thing that I can hope for is that one day, you know, it's ultimately the youth that's going to keep the hope alive. Because you guys you've seen it all. And I can't blame you for being tired. I can't blame you for being fed up with this mess.
And it is indeed a mess. I had a conversation with a guy named Andrew Young once. Andrew Young was on the balcony with Martin Luther King when Martin Luther King died. He was one of the ones on the balcony. He later became mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, and then he became ambassador, Andrew Young. And he had told me as well, he says, Brother Gray, I'm just tired of it. And he, at that time, I was 48, 50 years old. He was about 65, 67, a couple years older than what I am now. And I didn't understand or feel it, put it that way. I understood, I just didn't feel it. Now I feel it, because I'm almost that age. This is what we do on the Commish Radio Show, as I say before, as Tupac Shakur once say, introduce the topic and drop it. And that's what we're doing today on this date, February 26, 2022, 10 years after the death of Trayvon Martin, who died with a bag of Skittles in his pocket, Arizona iced tea at his side, and a dream. A dream in which he could go home and enjoy a snack. Yeah, that's a dream. Martin Luther King once said, the American dream is the American nightmare, and I understand what Dr. King said. It's the same dream that Boatman John had. Perhaps he didn't have Skittles and iced tea, but he had a bowl of ice cream. He wasn't walking home, he was home. President Obama said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. At some point, every African American male over the age of 17 was Trayvon. I am Trayvon Martin. And you've been listening to the Commish Radio Show. We'll see you guys next week.
Good morning. Punks. These assholes, they always get away. Those were the words in that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy who he didn't know. And excuse my language, but those were his words, not mine.
Can't just kill him up for no reason and get away with it, shout. Gotta have some justice. Whether it's street justice or legal justice. Southern Smooth. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. In the hood, I can walk anywhere I want. Don't shoot. I can do anything I want. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. I'm Trayvon Martin. In the hood, I can walk anywhere I want. Don't shoot. I can do anything I want. I'm sick and I'm nauseous. This is obnoxious, even though that is obvious. How they really come up. We was reaching for freedom, now we seeking out justice. Then they get away with it, like they paid off the judges. Mom and dad crying, sad that their son